Chapter 3887. Yiqing Luo's straightforward words made Gu Zixi face turn red. She was pushed in front of old Master Huang. Hearing Yiqing Luo praising herself in various ways, she was even more embarrassed. She didn't even dare to raise her head to look at old Master Huang. Especially when she heard Yiqing Luo saying, "To have your own force, to call the wind and summon the rain," her expression changed slightly. She had not expected, Yiqing Luo had already seen through it. But, to tell the truth, her so-called force, as compared to the Huangfu family, was indeed a world of difference. She wanted to move away, but her back was blocked by Yiqing Luo's hand. Soon after, the girl's cold yet extremely clear voice drilled into one's heart. "So, Zixi doesn't owe your Huangfu family anything, but Pei Xing owes Zixi." Her brows rose as her cold voice called out Pei Xing's name. "Ah Xing, am I right?" Pei Xing was stunned by the 2-meter-8 aura once again. Especially when he heard Yiqing Luo's words. He was even more dazed. The gaze he used to look at Gu Zixi was filled with heartache and guilt. So he hurriedly nodded his head vigorously. Even withstanding the pressure from Huangfu Zhentian, he strode to Gu Zixi's side and held her hand. "Zixi. Sorry. And, really thank you. Willing to give up everything for him. Such a beautiful lady. He would use his entire life to repay her." Pei Xing took the initiative to get closer and held her hand. This made Gu Zixi's anxious heart instantly calm down. To her, Pei Xing was her calming pill. As long as Pei Xing's feelings towards her and his heart towards her no longer wavered, she had nothing to fear. Her originally apprehensive and slightly bashful blushing face was now filled with a blissful and sweet smile. Her and Pei Xing's hands were intertwined tightly as her eyes were filled with tenderness. Yiqing Luo looked on from the side as her lips curled into a satisfied smile. To make Pei Xing take the initiative to walk to Gu Zixi's side at this moment, to give her comfort and warmth. This was Pei Xing's biggest improvement. As expected. As long as it was related to love, it could give a person a huge amount of courage. But the sweet atmosphere between Pei Xing and Gu Zixi. In her or Grandpa Xing's eyes, it was sweet. But in the eyes of Huangfu and the other two, it was extremely glaring. Especially looking at the smile on Yiqing Luo's lips. Huangfu Fingyan's eyeballs were about to pop out. Anger surged in his heart. She couldn't help but sneer. Her voice was sharp because of her anger. "You make it sound nice. What do you mean by your own forces? What do you mean by giving up everything? To put it bluntly, aren't you just trying to curry favor with the powerful? Using Pei Xing to climb up the ranks of the Huangfu family? What kind of power can rival our Huangfu clan?" Feng Yan. Huangfu Feng Yan spoke rudely once more and completely infuriated Huangfu Zhentian. Huangfu Zhentian shouted out fiercely, and the gaze he shot at Huangfu Feng Yan was filled with a stern warning. Huangfu Feng Yan pouted and lowered her head. Without waiting for Huangfu Zhentian to apologize to Yiqing Luo, Yiqing Luo had already burst out laughing. Between his brows, there was a lazy and elegant expression. However, the words that came out of his mouth were extremely cold. "Old Master, you've seen it for yourself. It's not that I don't want to give Old Master face." But her voice sounded like she was laughing. Laughing so much that it made one's hair stand on end. Following that, her vision slowly shifted towards Huangfu Feng Yan. The smile on the corners of her lips became even thicker. Chapter 3888. Huangfu Feng Yan's face instantly sunk as the murderous intent in her eyes surfaced. As though she couldn't wait to rush forward and tear Yiqing Luo into pieces. Facing such a gaze, Yiqing Luo totally didn't care about it. Anyway, with old Master Huangfu around, Huangfu Feng Yan had no chance to make a move. Moreover, old Lai, Gue Wu and the rest were around. She was afraid that Huangfu Fengyan wouldn't make a move. As long as Huangfu Fengyan dared to make a move, she would have the reason to let Huangfu Fengyan die without any hesitation. Huangfu Fengyan, if you dare to say another word, in future no matter what occasion you are to stay in the Huangfu family obediently and not take a step out. Huangfu Zhentian was obviously infuriated by Huangfu Fengyan as his eyes widened. Was he going to ground her? Huangfu Fengyan looked at her grandfather in disbelief. But when she met her grandfather's eyes which were filled with anger, she shuddered as she hung her head down, not daring to say another word. Yi Qing Luo expressed that there was still a little bit of disappointment. If they could create a ruckus, she would be able to properly teach Huangfu Fengyan a lesson. TSK. Looking at Yi Qing Luo shaking her head and sighing uninterestedly. As astute as Huangfu Zhentian, how could he not see through her thoughts? Huangfu Zhentian's eyes darkened and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Very soon, his face lit up with a generous and benevolent yet dignified smile. I know that Lady Gu is a good lady. Even though I haven't spent much time with Lady Gu, I know that for you to be so unswervingly devoted to this boy when he had nothing left, you must truly be treating him with sincerity. No matter how big Miss Gu's influence in the Earth realm is, this is after all created by Miss Gu using her own hands and ability, so this is worthy of our respect. I am also very clear that Miss Gu put down everything in the Earth realm and followed this silly kid to the heaven realm, to a foreign unknown place. How much courage did you have? I believe in Pei Xing's foresight and choice, and I believe that I am not so old that my eyes are failing me. Huangfu Zhentian said one sentence after another, in a sincere manner. It didn't seem like it, he was just casually saying it. Gu Zixi eyes reddened as she tried to understand his words. Huangfu Zhentian smiled at Gu Zixi. Young lady, thank you so much. Gu Zixi covered her mouth. Nothing was more touching than this. She didn't care if others could understand her or misunderstand her. It was enough for her to obtain the approval of Pei Xing's elders. Huangfu Zhentian then looked at Pei Xing and said, "Stinking brat, treat your young lady well. She is a good lady." Pei Xing looked at Gu Zixi and intertwined their fingers. A rare look of determination appeared on the man's handsome face. "I came here today just to see you, and also to deepen your impression of your grandfather. Now that I'm done, I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb you youngsters." He stepped forward and patted Pei Xing's shoulder before patting Gu Zixi's shoulder. With a smile, his figure flickered and he disappeared from the hole. Only the remnants of his majestic voice still lingered in the air. "And the three of you, go back to the heavenly realm. Night." Huangfu Fengyan, who was scolded by Huangfu Zhentian, was lying on the bed with half of her face still swollen. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists, pounding the bed with force. "Damn Yi Qing Luo! You slut! I want you to die!" She angrily pounded the bed with force. "Fengyan!" A slightly dissatisfied voice was heard in the wind. Chapter 3889. Hearing that person's voice, Huangfu Fengyan's ferocious expression froze. She immediately looked up. She saw the man standing by the bed, staring at her with a dark expression. Huangfu Fengyan immediately sat up on the bed and shifted her gaze away from the man at a loss. She nervously called out, "Third brother." "That's right. The person who came was the third young master of the Huangfu family, Huangfu Qifei." Huangfu Qifei stared straight at her. His usually warm eyes now contained a bit of coldness. Especially after seeing her lower her head. The disdain in his eyes was even more obvious. Huangfu Qifei didn't speak for a long time. Huangfu Fengyan's heart was in a mess. From time to time, she would glance at Huangfu Qifei's eyes. Facing her third brother. She had always been in awe and fear. She wasn't even this nervous in front of her brother, Huangfu Dongyu. Huangfu Qifei clearly looked gentler and gentler than the others. But Huangfu Fengyan was clear. Under the gentle mask of her third brother, there was a hidden cruelty. You've provoked that woman time and time again. Can't you learn to be obedient? Huangfu Qifei finally spoke. He let out a sigh. Even the sigh of a refined and elegant young master was so gentle. His knees were on the side of the bed. Huangfu Fengyan's body trembled. She instinctively wanted to retreat. However, her chin was caught by the man's outstretched hand. Huangfu Qifei sat by the bed. He hooked her chin with one hand and moved closer. His face was as gentle as jade, and he was handsome and refined. There was even a hint of a smile in his eyes. Huangfu Qifei sighed lightly and said, "Look, your face is hurting, isn't it?" Huangfu Fengyan felt as if a poisonous snake had slid across her face. Her pupils shrank nervously. Huangfu Qifei smiled warmly. "It's okay. You'll get used to it sooner or later. Fengyan, with the situation today, our days in the future will be more difficult than now." Huangfu Fengyan was forced to meet his gaze. Looking at the gentleness in the man's eyes, she trembled. Even her lips were trembling. What habit? No. Grandfather won't. Don't you see the situation clearly? Huangfu Qifei sighed as he shook his head, Peixing that fellow now has a backer. Moreover, Yiqing Luo's performance is very obvious, she is determined to help Peixing. You know very well that the power behind Yiqing Luo is not just an overlord. A wisp of a cold light flashed past the depths of Huangfu Qifei's warm eyes, and it vanished in a fleeting manner. He then looked at Huangfu Fengyan. The emotions in his eyes had returned to the gentleness of a young master. After Peixing returns to Huangfu family, on account of the overlord and those powerhouses behind Yiqing Luo, they will definitely give Peixing a very high position. By then, how do you think Peixing will treat us? He paused slightly, his fingers caressing Huang Fengyan's face, his eyes filled with heartache. My pitiful Fengyan, such a beautiful face, how could she be so ruthless? After Peixing returns to the Huangfu family, what should we do? Huangfu Qifei's voice, expression, and actions. They were all heartache and helpless towards Huangfu Fengyan. However, Huangfu Fengyan listened to his words. She only felt her body turning icy cold. She shivered as her little hands clenched tightly onto Huangfu Qifei's sleeve, as though she was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. Chapter 3890. So, what does Fengyan want to do? Huangfu Qifei held her hand instead and patted her back lightly like a big brother, comforting her with a warm voice. I want to. Huangfu Fengyan stiffly leaned into Huangfu Qifei's embrace, her eyes bursting with intense killing intent. I want him dead. Who do you want to die? Huangfu Qifei smiled warmly and slightly tightened his grip on Huangfu Fengyan's hand. Pei Sheng. She would never allow anyone to affect her position in the Huangfu family. Pei Sheng was just a lowly branch disciple. A piece of trash that didn't even have half of the Huangfu family's blood in him. She would never let Pei Sheng have any chance to climb over her head. Good girl. Huangfu Qifei smiled lightly as he placed his hand on Huangfu Fengyan's head, and his voice became even lower and gentler. Just do as you want to do. No matter what, third brother will always be behind you and shield you from the wind and rain. Huangfu Fengyan's eyelashes trembled as she clasped her hands together. Then, he hugged Huangfu Qifei tightly. Third brother, good girl. Huangfu Qifei lightly patted her head and shoulders. His voice was still so magnetic and pleasant to listen to. However, that refined and gentle face. What emerged was a chilling ruthlessness. Especially that pair of extremely bright eyes in the dark night, flowing with treacherous cold light. Within the treasures gathering exchange house. Because there were many guests on the list. Yiqing Luo and the rest also stayed behind to help tidy up the treasures. Until it was almost midnight. Yiqing Luo and the rest then prepared to leave. Pei Xing and Gu Zixi walked them to the door. After greeting, Yiqing Luo was about to leave. Pei Xing hesitated for a while before he quickly walked to Yiqing Luo's side and whispered, "Ah Luo, I still have something to tell you." Ever since Pei Xing sent her out, his gaze had drifted over her body from time to time. Yiqing Luo also guessed that Pei Xing had something to tell her. She didn't expose him because she wanted Pei Xing to take the initiative to mention it. So Yiqing Luo wasn't surprised at all, only allowing Gue Wu and the rest to make a move first. Gue Wu and the others walked far away. Pei Xing pouted and said softly, "Today, in front of old Master Huangfu, thank you, if Yiqing Luo wasn't around." The old man's arrival and the trio's arrival. It would definitely overwhelm him and Gu Zixi. Especially that group of three, he continued to humiliate Gu Zixi. If he was angered, he would only go crazy and argue with those three people. By then, old Master Shen's impression of Zixi would be even worse. "I'm just speaking the truth." Yiqing Luo took a look at Gu Zixi direction as her lips curled, "So you should really treat Zixi well. If there's a lady who is willing to give up everything for you, then that means that she really loves you, so don't let Zixi down." "I know." At the mention of Zixi, the light in Pei Xing's eyes became brighter and more determined. "I won't let her down." Yiqing Luo smiled. Pei Xing continued, "Actually, I have another question." Yiqing Luo asked. Pei Xing lowered his eyes and quickly raised them to look at her. Judging from old Master Huangfu's attitude today, he should have agreed to let me hold the auction of the treasure-gathering auction, right? After asking this question, Pei Xing immediately lowered his head, feeling extremely apprehensive. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she asked in reply, "What do you think?" I think, yes." Pei Xing nodded. Chapter 3891. Pei Xing's thoughts were exposed and his face flushed red. He indeed meant it this way. But there was no need to be so direct. Yiqing Luo laughed when she heard that. But the laughter made Pei Xing feel a little guilty. He stiffened his body and as he raised his head, he clenched his fists and whispered, "Old Master, he seems to be testing me. That feeling makes me breathless." "Indeed he is testing you." Yiqing Luo raised her brows and nodded seriously, "You're a grandson who is stranded outside and he personally came to bring you back to Huangfu family. He must be bearing a huge pressure. He naturally wants to test you, whether you have the qualification to become a member of Huangfu family." Pei Xing's face turned pale in an instant. Large-scale families are survival of the fittest. This is the norm and also the reality. Yiqing Luo was very straightforward, "With your character, if you go to Huangfu family, I'm afraid you'll be in their hands. If you really want to take root in Huangfu family and protect Zixi, then you must make yourself stronger." Her expression was very calm. Even that pair of upturned eyes seemed extremely calm. Pei Xing, on the other hand, could tell from those extremely dark eyes that the young girl was very serious. She was teaching him the way to survive in a large family clan at high speed. As for old Master's test, what kind of results you want, will depend on your own performance. Yiqing Luo still left the choice in his own hands. Pei Xing looked at Yiqing Luo in a daze. After a long time, he slowly lowered his head. "I know." His voice was very soft. But she could still hear the change in his tone. "Thank you, Ah Luo." Yiqing Luo waved her hand and looked at the few of them who were so far away that they could not be seen, think carefully on how to convince old Master. I'll make a move first, you guys rest early too. Pei Xing didn't urge her to stay. After the two of them said their goodbyes, Yiqing Luo chased after the few of them. After running for an entire street, she didn't see any signs of them. Yiqing Luo cursed silently, a bunch of heartless fellows. They actually didn't wait for me. Since she couldn't catch up, she might as well slow down her footsteps. Just as she was about to leave, her ears suddenly twitched sensitively. A haze immediately appeared in her long and narrow eyes. The expression on his face changed in an instant. Who are you? She looked warily at the wall in front of her. Just now, he had vaguely sensed a slight fluctuation coming from there. Someone, following her. Chi, an almost inaudible whooshing sound of air was extremely clear in the silent night. The moonlight shone down. It reflected the tall and imposing figure standing on the wall. The cold moonlight poured down. It made her look like a fairy from the moon, quiet and elegant like cold jade. When he saw that person. Chapter 3892. Really close. So close that the tip of his foot was pressing against hers. As long as he raised his head slightly, their breaths would collide with each other. Yiqing Luo's reaction was swift. Almost at the instant when she raised her head, she retreated 2 steps backwards, widening the distance between her and Zhu Wuaxian. Then she asked, "Why are you following me?" Zhu Wuaxian didn't move, only using that pair of black icy cold eyes to look at her quietly. His eyes were dark and heavy. Yiqing Luo couldn't tell how many emotions were hidden under that pair of eyes. He didn't speak. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to ask further. She walked past Zhu Wuaxian and walked towards the direction of the Qiao residence. Taking a step, Zhu Wuaxian followed closely behind. Hearing the footsteps behind her and the man's thick plum fragrance, this made Yiqing Luo unable to ignore the follower behind her. She stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look at him. "If you don't want to answer my question, then don't follow me." Zhu Wuaxian's gaze was fixed on Yiqing Luo, looking at that pair of alluring eyes which made his heart fluttered, like the stars, dazzling eyes. He went into a daze for a moment. The lines on his face became gentler. But Yiqing Luo felt a little unnatural from his weird stare. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased into a bundle as a sliver of displeasure surfaced between her brows. "Zhu Wuaxian, if there's nothing, please don't disturb me." "Yes." Zhu Wuaxian looked at her eyes as he blurted out a word. Yiqing Luo stood on the spot. "What's the matter? Say it." Zhu Wuaxian's cold eyes were calm and his voice was calm without any ripples. "I miss you." Yiqing Luo, goodbye, goodbye. Yiqing Luo left without turning back. Zhu Wuaxian's expression congealed slightly. The lines which had finally softened suddenly turned cold and hard again. He stared at Yiqing Luo's back view. Between his brows, some black qi leaked out. Perhaps he had sensed something amiss. Yiqing Luo took 2 steps forward and swiftly turned her head around as her expression was extremely grave as she looked behind her. His gaze swept past Zhu Wuaxian, and then he quickly looked at the surroundings. The expression on his face became more and more solemn. "Zhu Wuxin, did you sense a very strange aura just now?" she asked. Zhu Wuxin's eyes flickered. His thick eyelashes hid all the emotions in his eyes, leaving only an icy chill. "No. No. Impossible." That fleeting sense of danger just now was definitely not an illusion. Zhu Wuxin would never let her feel such a sense of danger and unease in front of her. Therefore, there must be someone hiding in the dark. In the dark. Could it be? Yiqing Luo suddenly recalled that in the afternoon, Huangfu trio had followed Huangfu Zhentian to the treasures exchange. When Huangfu Fengyan left, she looked at her with a gaze. Her heart skipped a beat. Not good. Ah, Sheng and Zishi. Something must have happened at the treasures exchange hall. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Axian stood in front of Yi Qing Luo, his expressionless face was indifferent. Move aside. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand to push Zhu Wu Axian aside. But Zhu Wuxin grabbed her wrist with the back of his hand. Yi Qing Luo struggled, but he didn't loosen his grip. His calm and indifferent face brought along an oppressive aura. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly. Since she couldn't struggle free, she might as well not move. She only raised her head as her charming eyes were coated with ice, looking at Zhu Wuxian's eyes without blinking. Your appearance, is it a coincidence or? Zhu Wuxian's ability was above hers. Chapter 3893. But now, Zhu Wuxian intentionally stopped her here. This made Yi Qing Luo think more. Zhu Wuxian's deep and icy cold eyes looked deeply at her suspicious gaze as his thin lips slowly rose, as though it was curled into an extremely shallow arc. That arc was very shallow, very shallow. So shallow that Yi Qing Luo could only feel his self-deprecation. In your heart, am I such a person? Zhu Wuxian's voice was also very faint, with a tinge of ridicule. The hand which he held her wrist tightened. Yi Qing Luo took a small step back. Facing such a piercing, questioning, and hurt gaze, she really doubted herself. Did she make a mistake? After all, Zhu Wuxian indeed didn't seem like someone who would cooperate with others to complete some plans. It was just as he had said before. He would never do anything to hurt her. But there was a strange feeling in her heart, reminding her of something. That fleeting sense of danger just now was gone. And Zhu Wuxian's unresponsive attitude. It really made her have no choice but to think more. She exchanged glances with Zhu Wuxian for a moment. She kept away the suspicion and probing in her eyes as she shook her wrist which was being held. All right, I believe you. But you must let go of me now. My friend might be in danger. Not letting go. Zhu Wuxian leaned even closer. The plum fragrance from his body enveloped her. Yi Qing Luo wasn't used to it and wanted to retreat, but Zhu Wuxian held her even tighter as he pulled her towards his direction. Every time you ask me to let go, Yi Qing Luo, is your heart made of iron? Yi Qing Luo immediately raised her hand and blocked his chest. She raised her head as her brows creased even tighter. Zhu Wuxian, if you continue to pester me endlessly, don't force me to really suspect you. Ha! He laughed lightly as his indifferent expression didn't fluctuate at all. His lips curled into a self-deprecating smile, as though he was ridiculing himself for being so ridiculous. Haven't you suspected me enough? Zhu Wuxian's clear voice was calm, but Yi Qing Luo could tell that he was condemning her. Yi Qing Luo felt that today's Zhu Wuxian was extremely strange. Following her for no reason. Then, he stopped her for no reason. She didn't want to suspect Zhu Wuxian. However, Zhu Wuxian's current actions made her doubt him. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened as a layer of frost appeared between her brows. In that case, your current motive is to not let me rush over to the treasure-gathering exchange? Zhu Wuxin's brows twitched slightly. Finally, he released Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Yi Qing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at him as she speedily flew towards the direction of the treasure-gathering exchange. Just as he moved, something tightened around his waist. Zhu Wuxin's wrist circled around her waist. Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk. What exactly do you want to do? I'll go with you in case you run away. Zhu Wuxin narrowed his cold eyes. His clear voice was frighteningly deep, giving off a strange feeling of danger. Yi Qing Luo's fingers touched his hand which was wrapped around her waist, and with a nimble movement, she distanced herself from his approach. We can do it together, but don't get touchy. Except for Dmo Xian. If any other man approached her, she would feel repulsed. Not to mention, clasping her wrists and hugging her waist. Yiqing Luo's feet stirred up the wind as her speed was extremely fast. Zhu Wu Axian was behind her, gazing deeply at her back view. In his black pupils, there seemed to be a whirlpool surging. This feeling was like every single time. She would turn around and leave without any hesitation. She had never turned around to give him a look. In her eyes, he would never exist. He could only look at her back view forever. Chapter 3894. Zhu Wu Axian's 5 fingers tightened. In his mind, the bewitching words of that person from secluded palace kept appearing. Young Patriarch Chu, do you really think that by silently putting in the effort behind the scenes, you will be able to get the beauty back? I'll tell you directly, this way. We'll never get Yiqing Luo's heart. Why do you think Yiqing Luo is so dead set on the Overlord even after she had agreed to marry you? It's because the Overlord knows how to make use of his advantage, to make Yiqing Luo slowly fall into his emotional trap. Young Patriarch Chu, you're too silly. Silly. He also felt that he was rather silly. Obviously, based on his character. If he wanted, he would plunder. If he couldn't get it, he would destroy it. But unfortunately, when facing Yiqing Luo, countless of times, his mind had already devised 100 ways to plunder Yiqing Luo. But every time he met Yiqing Luo's gaze, all of his thoughts turned into a blank. Couldn't bear to see any trace of loathing towards him in her eyes. Couldn't bear to see any trace of disappointment towards him in her eyes. Couldn't bear to let her treat him as a stranger in future. Couldn't bear to even plunder. How could he bear to destroy it? Chu Wu Axian felt that he was becoming more and more unlike himself. Treasures exchange hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasures exchange hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasure gathering hole. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi were cleaning up the treasures exchange hole. Almost subconsciously, the teacup in his hand had already been thrown towards a dark corner. Almost subconsciously, the teacup in his hand had already been thrown into the darkness. Gu Zishi fell into his arms as her face blushed slightly. Gu Zishi fell into his arms, her pretty face blushing. She also felt the cold murderous air in the room. She also sensed the chilling aura that permeated the room. Just as that teacup hit the dark corner. When the teacup hit the dark corner, it was already too late. A few figures speedily dashed out. Following that, a few assassins dressed in black jumped in from all directions. Then, a few assassins dressed in black jumped in from all directions, holding weapons in their hands that emitted a chilling light. Pei Xing tightened his grip on Gu Zishi's delicate body as he surveyed his surroundings. He then raised his eyebrows in alarm. There were at least 20 people in front of him. Each of them was tall and sturdy. Furthermore, the pressure from the Xian energy flowing through his body made it hard for him to breathe. Who are you? Why are you causing trouble at treasure gathering? This was Pei Xing's first time encountering an assassin. His handsome face was filled with vigilance. Do it. Why would the assassin waste so much time talking to Pei Xing? With a wave of his arm, he directed the other assassins to attack Pei Xing. Zishi, hold on tight. Pei Xing's face darkened, and the dark golden light in his eyes flickered even more wantonly. Immediately after, a strong burst of dark force erupted from his body. A dark golden light swirled around Pei Xing's body. Using his hand as a blade, he slashed out a few dark golden saber lights at the assassins who were coming at him from all directions. The dark rays slashed down, and the air seemed to have been cut open. The raging hurricane was like a wave, setting off huge waves. Sheng, don't bother about me. Gu Zishi looked at the surrounding murderous assassins, as a layer of cold glint surfaced in her eyes. 20 powerful assassins whose profound grades were not low, to let Pei Xing deal with them alone, and he still had to protect her. This was absolutely taxing. Chapter 3895. Gu Zixi gaze swept across the assassins. His mind was already quickly analyzing the strength of these people and the time it would take for the two of them to react. Pei Xing did not let go. Gu Zixi knew he was worried about her. She held Pei Xing's hand around her waist and smiled at him. "Trust me, I won't let myself get hurt." The dark light intertwined. Pei Xing saw the determination in Gu Zixi's eyes. He hesitated for a moment before letting go of her. "Be careful." Gu Zixi smiled and nodded. Then, a spear appeared out of nowhere and attacked the surrounding assassins. The two of them attacked together. It did reduce the pressure on Pei Xing. But for the two of them, the situation was not optimistic. There were too many assassins. And they were not weak. No matter how strong they were, they could not fight against so many. The two of them were at a disadvantage. Especially in terms of their physical strength, they could not compare to specially trained assassins. They resisted. After a while, they could not escape from the blades of these assassins. They could not go on like this. Pei Xing and Gu Zixi were forced to retreat again and again. They fled into the backyard of treasure-gathering hole. There was no way out. At the same time, the surrounding assassins were closing in. Their attacks were very vicious. Their goal was clear. It was to take both of their lives. Killing moves were unleashed, the entire treasure exchange hall shook with thunderous aftershocks. But with such a huge commotion, it did not attract the attention of the citizens. It was as if the treasure exchange had been isolated from without embroiling city. After forcing back a wave of attacks, the two of them were exhausted. Gu Zixi looked up at the dark, starless sky above the courtyard. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes flashed. She got close to Pei Xing and stuffed something into his hands. "I will attract their attention. You find a chance to throw this out of the courtyard." It was a round tube the length of a finger, carved out of bamboo. Pei Xing didn't know what it was when he held it in his hand. After instructing Pei Xing, Gu Zixi raised her spear. The spear had swept up a wave, and the explosive energy rushed towards the assassins. It was so fast that Pei Xing did not have time to swap places with Gu Zixi. He saw that Gu Zixi was already fighting with the assassin. If he delayed any longer, it would only put Zixi in more danger. Pei Xing gripped the tube tightly, leaped up, and threw the item outside the courtyard. He didn't know if it was an illusion. When the tube flew out of the courtyard, he could vaguely see a transparent wave of light blocking the tube. However, immediately after, a wisp of dark golden flowing light flickered within the transparent light wave. In the blink of an eye, the tube rushed out of the wall and landed outside the courtyard. Boom! There was a deafening explosion. A wisp of green smoke surged into the sky. The green smoke quickly filled the sky and formed a complicated pattern. Pei Xing didn't have much time to pay attention to this strange scene. After making sure that the tube was thrown out of the hospital, some of the assassins had already sensed that something was wrong and quickly pounced towards him, wanting to stop him. Ugh! There was a muffled grunt. Gu Zixi's figure stood in front of him. The spear flipped, repelling the countless killer moves in front of it. However, the remnant might was still vibrating. Gu Zixi was hit in the chest. Zixi! Pei Xing's pupils constricted. He quickly rushed forward and held Gu Zixi's delicate body. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Gu Zixi's mouth. Chapter 3896. I'm fine. Gu Zixi raised her hand and wiped the blood from the corner of her lips. She shook her head at Pei Xing and said, "Don't get distracted. Hold on a little longer." Our reinforcements will be here soon. The woman's face was clearly pale, but the corners of her mouth curved into a faint smile, pretending to be relaxed as she comforted him. Pei Xing had an indescribable feeling in his heart. When the surrounding assassins saw this, they took the opportunity to rush forward. A murderous aura spread across the sky. However, the man who was holding the woman in his arms was stiff and motionless. It was as if he did not notice the presence of the assassins. The assassin was closing in on him at high speed. Gu Zixi pupils dilated as she struggled to stand in front of Pei Xing. All of a sudden, Zhong Pei Xing let out a roar. The man hugged the woman and suddenly raised his head. His handsome face looked somewhat ferocious because of the roar. His eyes were covered in a layer of dark golden light. Such a radiance was extremely dazzling. It was as if all the light had gathered in his eyes. Pei Xing roared. The surrounding assassins who were swarming over were all sent flying by the intense flowing light that burst forth from Pei Xing's body. When Yiqing Luo just rushed over, this was what she saw. She frowned slightly and looked at the man in front of her who was surrounded by flowing lights. The Huangfu bloodline in Pei Xing's body was activated once again. This was not a good sign. This kind of frequent activation of the Huangfu bloodline was a little like her using a divine artifact or some other power to temporarily increase her strength. It was very easy for it to exceed the limits of her body. Suddenly, she sensed something, and her ears twitched. A group of forces is approaching. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly as she glanced sideways at Zhu Wuxian's direction. Chu Wuxi nodded expressionlessly. She raised her head and looked at the spreading smoke in the sky. This approaching force. Was Gu Zixi using this signal flare to call for reinforcements, or were they from the killer's side? At this moment, Pei Xing had already stopped shouting. He slightly tightened his arms around Gu Zixi and lowered his eyes. Because of Pei Xing's roar and the aura bursting forth from his body, Gu Zixi was dumbfounded. Pei Xing lowered his head. Her eyelashes fluttered, and when she met Pei Xing's gaze, she froze. Pei Xing's eyes were dark gold. It was different from the dark golden flowing light that flashed from time to time. The current him. His eyes were dark gold in color. It was a noble and majestic color. Are you scared? Pei Xing gently bent down, kissed her forehead, and asked softly. Gu Zixi blinked her eyes and shook her head violently. No, don't be afraid. I won't let those people hurt you again. Pei Xing's voice was still gentle. However, the expression on his face and his dark golden eyes were filled with a chilling killing intent. He wondered if it was because of the color of her eyes. Gu Zixi felt that Pei Xing's aura was so strong that he was 8 meters tall. Pei Xing gently pushed Gu Zixi behind his back. His figure was tall and straight. He looked at the assassins who had been sent flying, and his dark golden eyes flashed with an extremely cold killing intent. The assassins looked at each other for a moment. Then, they pounced on Pei Xing. On the outer wall of the courtyard, 2 blazing figures were extremely eye-catching. The wind blew and Zhu Wuxian's clothes fluttered. His eyes were calm as he looked at Yiqing Luo. Aren't you in a hurry to save him? Why aren't you making a move? Chapter 3897. The current Pei Xing shouldn't have any problem dealing with those killers. She made her move. She might as well let Pei Xing nurture some experience. Let him deal with it himself. She was just going to watch the show and wait for the team that was rushing over. Which side were they from? It was indeed as what Yiqing Luo said. The assassins who originally had the upper hand were besieging Pei Xing, but they were actually unable to suppress Pei Xing's arrogance. On the contrary, it made Pei Xing braver as he fought. But it was after all 1 against 20. Under the entanglement, Pei Xing's body was covered with scattered wounds. His robe was dyed red with blood. This made Pei Xing even more bloodthirsty. The profound rays in his hands became sharper and sharper. Wave after wave of Xian waves exploded. The sounds of fighting were extremely loud. The originally narrow and simple backyard had turned into ruins under the entanglement. Sheng. Gu Zixi voice was trembling as she stared at Pei Xing with reddened eyes. Looking at the increasing number of wounds on Pei Xing's body, she gripped her long spear tightly as she wanted to go forward to help. But she was worried that her rash actions would implicate Pei Xing. Now Pei Xing alone was suppressing 20 of them. If this rhythm was disrupted, Pei Xing would be overwhelmed. She was extremely anxious as she stared anxiously at the sky outside the courtyard, which was filled with green smoke. She turned her head. She saw 2 figures standing on top of the wall. It was Yiqing Luo. On seeing Yiqing Luo, Gu Zixi's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to open her mouth, she saw the young lady's bright eyes curling into a smile as she shook her head. Gu Zixi was stunned as she didn't understand what was going on. Yiqing Luo was obviously just by the side, why didn't she help Pei Xing? But she was very clear in her heart. Yiqing Luo absolutely wouldn't ignore Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo definitely had her reasons for making such a decision. No matter how anxious Gu Zixi was, she forcefully suppressed it down. Knowing that Yiqing Luo was just by the side, she wasn't worried anymore. She's asking you for help. Chu Wu Axian naturally noticed Gu Zixi's gaze as his lips twitched coldly. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her eyes flashed. Why do I feel that you seem to be more anxious than me? Zhu Wu Axian sneered softly and said in a self-mocking manner, just now, in order to rush over to save these 2 people, you spoke coldly to me. Now that I've accompanied you here, you're watching the show. Do you think I can feel at ease? Your heart will also have times where it's not balanced. Yiqing Luo slowly leaned in close to Zhu Wu Axian, as her gaze looked straight at the direction of his heart. Zhu Wu Axian's expression was cold, and his gaze was somewhat indifferent. I only have feelings for you, but you will only treat me as if I have no feelings for you. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes. His gaze returned to the battlefield below. The words that came out of his mouth were directed at Zhu Wuxin. My answer is the same as before. Chu Wuxin, it's time for you to walk out of the past. You, who are always limited by the past, will never be able to let others see your heart. I only want you to see it. Zhu Wuxin's words of love came one after another. Yiqing Luo felt that every time she met Zhu Wu Axian, Zhu Wuxin's cheesy words of love were upgraded. Every single time, it was even more seductive than the previous time. This didn't fit his image of an iceberg brother. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath. Towards Zhu Wu Axian, who was extremely obsessed, he wouldn't listen to any of her rejections. Facing Zhu Wu Axian, she felt a sense of helplessness. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision caught something. He's here. Chapter 3898. When Yiqing Luo landed on the ground, coincidentally, he stood in front of the group of people who were rushing over. There were about 30 people. They were all dressed in dark green clothes. The blood-stained flower pattern embroidered on it revealed their identities. Bloody mercenary group. The leader of the group was the most eye-catching existence. She was wearing a dark-colored dress with elegant pendants. He didn't seem like a leader at all. When Su Qingbing saw that the person blocking in front of her was Yiqing Luo, the grave and anxious expression on her face faded a little. Miss Yi, have you seen Zixi? Yiqing Luo nodded as she raised her hand and pointed towards the fading green smoke. This is your blood mercenary group's signal flare. Yes. Su Qingbing nodded. However, his eyes were looking around quickly. Finally, his gaze fell on the entrance of the gathering treasures exchange. Captain, I can feel the fluctuation of Xian Qi coming from inside. Zixi should be inside. Deputy Regiment Commander Bo's face was filled with anxiety. When he looked at Zhu Bao, he shot forward like a cannonball. Su Qingbing didn't stop him. The signal flare was shot by Gu Zixi. If it wasn't an emergency, Gu Zixi would never use this signal flare. Zixi is fine. Yiqing Luo pointed to the other side of the wall. If you're worried, you can go up and take a look. Su Qingbing furrowed her brows as a complicated expression appeared on her face. However, when they saw a red figure standing on the wall, a man emitting an extremely cold aura, their eyes unconsciously widened. Chu. Su Qingbing's expression changed unpredictably when she saw the man's face. And that person's vision had always been on Yiqing Luo. His face was cold. However, the emotions in his eyes were gentle. It was only when he sensed Su Qingbing's gaze that he raised his eyes slightly. When he looked at her, it was as if his eyes were covered with a layer of frost. When Yiqing Luo heard Su Qingbing's unfinished words, she couldn't help but raised her slender brows. Chu. Su Qingbing actually knew Zhu Wuxin. Furthermore, just now, Zhu Wuxin's gaze had paused on Su Qingbing for more than 3 seconds. In other words, Zhu Wuxin also knew Su Qingbing. But there was no time for Yiqing Luo to ponder over it. Bo Songyi's explosive roar could be heard from the side of the treasures exchange hall. Zixi. Are you hurt? This roar. Su Qingbing was startled awake. It also interrupted Yiqing Luo's deep thoughts. Su Qingbing quickly walked towards the treasure-gathering exchange. He had just arrived at the door. She stopped in her tracks and frowned. Then, he raised his hand and touched the air with his fingers. In the blink of an eye, Yiqing Luo saw that the direction of Su Qingbing's finger seemed to have sliced open a thin seam in the air. The transparent qi wave slowly split open to both sides, revealing a huge hole. A cold light flashed in Su Qingbing's eyes, and her slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That layer of air wave instantly shattered into pieces and collapsed. Within the treasures gathering exchange hall, violent and tyrannical profound energy spread out in all directions. When the 30 mercenaries from Bloody Mercenary Group who had rushed over felt this profound energy, their faces darkened and they looked at Su Qingbing with a serious expression. Su Qingbing nodded. A group of people swarmed into the treasures exchange hall. Looking at the group of aggressive mercenaries, Duan Ling Tian nodded. Yiqing Luo slanted her head, as she couldn't be bothered to stop them. Inside, Pei Xing should have already reached his limit. Chapter 3899. With the addition of the Blood Mercenaries group's mercenaries, how would those killers have any ability to resist? Especially. This was the first time Gu Zixi had used the signal flare. Under Su Qingbing's anxiety, she brought along the Blood Mercenaries group's elite mercenaries. With this move, those killers could only wait to be captured. Yiqing Luo and Su Qingbing walked to the backyard. Bo Songyi was supporting Gu Zixi as they walked over. Group leader, Zixi is injured. Gu Zixi smiled at Su Qingbing. Group leader, I'm fine. It's just a small injury. Su Qingbing looked at Gu Zixi pale face and frowned slightly. What's going on? Why are there killers here? She raised her eyes and glanced at Bo Songyi. Have you checked clearly? Who are these killers here to kill? Mentioning this, Bo Songyi's expression sunk. He glanced at Pei Xing's direction from the corner of his eyes and gave a cold harumph. The trouble that lad created has caused Zixi to suffer. I'm really fine, it has nothing to do with Xing. Gu Zixi heard Bo Songyi's tone and immediately opened her mouth to explain. Bo Songyi couldn't help but sneer. He can't even protect you, what kind of man is he? Gu Zixi bit her lower lip as a sliver of anger surfaced on her face. Bo Songyi. You. Before she could finish her words, Su Qingbing interrupted, Xing. Not calling me brother anymore. Su Qingbing opened her mouth. She indeed suppressed Gu Zixi accusation. Gu Zixi's face blushed slightly as she slowly lowered her eyelids, looking a little shy. Not brother anymore. TSK. Su Qingbing's lips curled as her elegant face broke out into a smile. Then congratulations, the clouds have parted to see the moon. Gu Zixi's face turned even redder. The two of them spoke one after another. Bo Songyi was completely stunned by the amount of information that was revealed. He looked at Gu Zixi in astonishment as his voice trembled. You and that lad. Gu Zixi smiled as she nodded. The glow in Bo Songyi's eyes dimmed. But he pretended not to mind as he said, congratulations. Coincidentally, Pei Xing, with the help of the mercenaries, had restrained all the killers and was anxiously looking for Gu Zixi. When he saw Gu Zixi, he quickly walked over. He stretched out his long arm and pulled Gu Zixi away from Bo Songyi's side into his embrace. He placed his large palm on Gu Zixi's face and gently caressed it. Are you all right? He asked gently. Gu Zixi leaned against his chest, and her pretty face was slightly flushed. I'm fine. When their eyes met, Yi Shiwen's expression changed. It was as if there was no room for anyone else. Bo Songyi looked at his empty wrist, then raised his head and looked at Gu Zixi, who was obviously happy and sweet. His hand, which was suspended in mid-air, clenched into a fist. Su Qingbing walked over and gently patted his shoulder. Then, he walked past Bo Songyi and walked into the courtyard. This melodramatic relationship drama made Yiqing Luo smack her lips non-stop. However, she did not intend to intervene in this melodramatic scene. She glanced at the two of them, and after confirming that they only had some superficial injuries, she followed Su Qingbing into the courtyard. When he passed by Pei Xing, she took out a medicine bottle and stuffed it into his hand. In the courtyard, the mercenaries stood by the side. The killers knelt on the ground, and one by one, their masks were torn off, revealing their faces. The killers had apparently been injected with profound qi, and were rooted to the ground, unable to even commit suicide. The mercenaries stood neatly by the side. The killers were pressed onto the ground in a sorry state. This stark contrast. TSK, let the Blood Red's elite mercenaries come over to wrap things up. Chapter 3900. Yiqing Luo and Su Qingbing walked over. The killers' eyes widened as they stared at the both of them with hatred. As though they were conveying their thoughts, don't try to dig out any information from us. I will not say anything even if I die. Kill me if you have the guts. Were killers afraid of death? No. They had to commit suicide if they failed the mission. They had the determination to die when they went out on a mission. What was there to be afraid of? So, other than the few killers who were killed by Pei Xing, the remaining 10 overkillers all had a "I am not afraid of anything" expression. Yiqing Luo swept past the killers' faces and asked Su Qingbing sideways, "These killers, which killer force are they from? You may not believe it if I say it." Su Qingbing shot a glance at the killers as her lips curled into a ridiculing arc. From their attire, these killers should be from Heaven Realm, Killer Alliance. Heaven Realm. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. She really couldn't believe it if she said it out. This bunch of weak scum killers. Before Pei Xing's transformation, he was already able to fight against 20 of them. Although they were at a disadvantage, but they weren't able to kill Pei Xing. Especially the moment the mercenaries came over. They didn't even have the chance to resist and were directly pressed onto the ground. Wasn't this too useless? Killers from Heaven Realm. So weak. Surely it wasn't a joke. No. Seeing the meaning of Yiqing Luo's expression, Su Qingbing directly responded, because I brought the elites from Blood Red. Her words paused slightly, as though she was afraid that Yiqing Luo didn't understand. She explained, these elites' abilities are well known in Heaven Realm. Yiqing Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. They are in the Earth Realm. Doesn't that violate the balance of the realm? Won't the balance historian interfere? Generally speaking, when one's ability reached a certain level, after accepting the assessment, they would be forced to ascend to the next realm. Su Qingbing gave her a, you are a country bumpkin look. As long as you don't do anything that violates the balance of the realm, the historian can't do anything. All right. If that was the explanation, then these Heaven Realm killers wouldn't be that weak. But Yiqing Luo felt that they were still quite weak. The Assassin Alliance was the largest assassin organization in Heaven Realm. With a high status, the price would naturally be high. The customers who accepted orders were either rich or powerful. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. He already had a candidate in mind. Do you know who the mastermind is? Su Qingbing raised her eyebrows. If you know, then kill these people. Yiqing Luo went into a blank, as her charming eyes lifted up slightly, meeting Su Qingbing's eyes. This woman seemed to be very observant. What she wants. Su Qingbing could guess it very quickly. Su Qingbing, on the other hand, was calm. After their eyes met, she even smiled at her. Yiqing Luo hid the probing look in her eyes and replied with a smile, the killer from the Heaven Realm, the target is Pei Xing, except, Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo hadn't even finished her words. Suddenly, an anxious voice descended from the sky. Then, a figure rushed into the courtyard. The man scanned his surroundings. After locking onto his target, his figure flashed and he dashed over. Pei Xing was applying medicine on Gu Zixi wound. Suddenly, his shoulder was grabbed by an enormous force. His body was turned to the other side. She saw an old, wrinkled face, and a pair of concerned and worried eyes. Old master. Pei Xing was so shocked that he stuttered. Chapter 3901. Huangfu Jintian pressed both his hands on Pei Xing's shoulders as he sized him up. Finally, her gaze landed on the pair of eyes that were covered in dark golden flowing light. Your eyes. Huangfu Jintian's white brows creased tightly. Are you all right? Earlier I sensed that you had once again activated the Huangfu family's energy and I was worried about you, so I followed the feeling and rushed over. After seeing Pei Xing's eyes, Huangfu Jintian knew that what he had sensed earlier wasn't an illusion. When Pei Xing heard that, his throat tightened as his eyes stared blankly at the old man in front of him. His heart tightened a little. For so many years, this was the first time he felt concern from an elder. What's the matter? Are you hurt somewhere? Huangfu Jintian saw that he didn't speak for a long time as his white brows creased even tighter. He pulled Pei Xing's arm and took his pulse. Pei Xing regained his senses as he hurriedly shook his head. I'm fine. I'm fine. Luckily. Blood mercenary group and all Luo rushed over. I'm fine. Huangfu Jintian, who was taking Pei Xing's pulse, frowned even tighter. This child's body was too weak. He could tell that he had absolutely suffered hardship since young. He had to recuperate properly in future. Finding out that Pei Xing's body was weak, Huangfu Jintian's heart doted on Pei Xing even more. He patted Pei Xing's shoulder as he shifted his attention to the surroundings. When he saw the rows of disheveled killers kneeling on the ground, his gaze suddenly turned sharp. What on earth is going on? Huangfu Jintian strode towards the middle of the courtyard. The current him had a cold hard expression as his dignified and noble aura wasn't concealed at all. Step by step, he neared the killers. It suppressed the formless pressure. Yiqing Luo had not expected that Huangfu Jintian would actually rush over. But just from Huang Fu Jintian's reaction and performance earlier, he was indeed a qualified elder. His concern towards Pei Xing came from the bottom of his heart. But even after Pei Xing went to heaven realm, with old master looking after him, he would still be surrounded by danger. There were some things that she had to remind old master. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her pink lips curled up as she spoke out softly. Does old master Huang Fu really want to know what's going on? Someone dares to hurt my grandson. You're really not putting my Huang Fu family in your eyes. Huang Fu Jintian was furious to the extreme. He raised his leg and kicked the chest of an assassin. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this matter. There's no need to investigate. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up lazily. Old master, don't be too full of yourself, after all. If you were to slap his face later, it would hurt Ah Xing's heart. Yiqing Luo's words were already very straightforward. Huang Fu Jintian naturally understood the ridicule in her words. Immediately, their faces darkened. Yiqing Luo smiled again. Originally I wanted to trouble the brothers from Blood Red to help settle this matter, but now that old master Huang Fu is here, I shall hand this matter over to old master to settle. As Yiqing Luo said that, she looked towards Su Qingbing with a smile. What does Blood Red group leader think? These killers' assassination target is Pei Xing. How Pei Xing wants to deal with it, we'll deal with it. Su Qingbing cooperated. It was one thing to guess something in her heart. But hearing an outsider saying that the assassination target was Pei Xing, this feeling was another thing. Huang Fu Jintian's expression turned even darker. Chapter 3902. Yiqing Luo was obviously passing the right to choose to him. She wanted to see if he cared more about Pei Xing or his other grandchildren. Yes. The other grandchildren. Huang Fu Trio. The killers from Heaven Realm, and their target was Pei Xing. It was obvious who the mastermind was. Pei Xing also understood the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. A trace of paleness appeared on his handsome face. He pursed his lips as he looked at Huang Fu Jintian. As though he wanted to know, in Huang Fu Jintian's heart, what kind of attitude would he use to settle this matter when his grandson did something wrong. Facing the gazes of a few juniors, Zhang Xian nodded. Especially his own grandson, he was extremely careful and hid his nervous gaze. Huang Fu Jintian's white brows creased tightly as he gritted his teeth. This matter concerns the Huang Fu family, I will. Before he could finish his words, Pei Xing, who was looking at Huang Fu Jintian cautiously, suddenly interrupted him. Forget it. Forget it. Huang Fu Jintian even suspected that he was hallucinating in his ears. The rest of the people also looked at Pei Xing in astonishment. He was almost killed. And he said forget it. Was there a hole in his brain? That was a killer from Heaven Realm. It was obvious that he wanted his life. Now he had old master Huang Fu as his backing to settle this matter. Shouldn't he make use of this opportunity to let old master Huang Fu cut off the mastermind's chance, so that this kind of assassination would not happen again? Pei Xing actually let it go just like that. The mercenaries present were unable to understand Pei Xing's actions. Bo Songyi's face was gloomy as he stared intently at Pei Xing and Gu Zixi interlocked fingers. His heart was burning with anger. What, forget it? Isn't he afraid of death? A cowardly man, on what basis can he give Zixi happiness? He's not worthy at all. His enraged voice was definitely not soft. It also broke the shocked atmosphere because of Pei Xing. Everyone's gazes turned towards Bo Songyi. Although Huang Fu Jintian felt more or less relieved because of Pei Xing's forget it, Huang Fu Jintian felt a sense of relief in his heart. But when he heard Bo Songyi's rebuke and ridicule, his heart of protecting his child welled up. A pair of fierce and dignified eyes glared at Bo Songyi. Bo Songyi was forced to step back by Huang Fu Jintian's gaze. Gu Zixi also did not understand Pei Xing's actions. She tugged at Pei Xing's arm and looked at him in confusion before shaking her head at him. She also suggested that the best choice was to let the old man handle this matter. However, Pei Xing smiled at her. There was a smile in his eyes. He seemed to be consoling her, telling her not to worry. Gu Zixi still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo patted her shoulder and shook her head at her. Pei Xing had already made up his mind. This was Pei Xing's own decision. He had his own considerations when he chose to forget it. Gu Zixi pursed her red lips. In the end, she did not speak again. She only held the man's arm tightly with one hand and used her actions to tell him, she's always been there. The other side. Su Qingbing had already turned to the side and stood in front of Bo Songyi, blocking the old man's gaze. Huang Fuzhintian retracted his gaze and looked back at Pei Xing as he frowned. You've been wrong today, are you sure? You don't need me to stand up for you. Pei Xing didn't avoid his gaze this time. Instead he met the old man's gaze and nodded, I'm sure, this matter. Let's forget about it. Chapter 3903. These light words were so minute that if one didn't listen carefully, it was impossible to tell what he was talking about. Because of this, Huang Fuzhintian felt his heart jolting as though it was touched by something. These words were like needles stabbing into his heart. It was so uncomfortable. This child, what kind of life had he led in the past? Was that why he was being so careful now? Not wishing for him to be put in a difficult position, just let go of the chance to take revenge? Huang Fuzhintian was very clear what kind of people his 3 grandchildren were. Even if Pei Xing let them off, those 3 people wouldn't be grateful. On the contrary, they would be insatiable. In a large family like the Huangfu family, Huang Fuzhintian wasn't averse to this kind of battle. But, seeing Pei Xing, he always had a kind of guilt and heartache feeling. Huang Fuzhintian took a look at Pei Xing as his expression was dignified as he spoke resolutely, Lad, you don't need to say any more. If I can't even protect my own grandson, then what's the point of bringing you back to the Huangfu family? I have my own plans for this matter. Pei Xing opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But looking at Huang Fuzhintian's gaze, he still kept his mouth shut. Huang Fuzhintian patted Pei Xing's shoulder heavily, Don't worry, no matter what, grandfather will help you to shoulder it. Pei Xing's eyelashes moved as he looked at Huang Fuzhintian in a daze. Somewhere in his heart was being softened bit by bit. His lips moved, grandfather, the word grandfather had yet to come out of his mouth. Suddenly, he felt a gust of cold wind, bringing along a lady's fragrance. It was accompanied by a lady's anxious voice, Grandfather. Why aren't you resting in your room, why did you come out alone? A slender figure stood in between Pei Xing and Huang Fuzhintian. It was Huangfu Fengyan. Her face was filled with anxiety as she looked at Huang Fuzhintian with an anxious expression, as though she was worried about something. At this distance, she could see the fine sweat on Huangfu Fengyan's forehead. Apparently, she had sprinted over. Yiqing Luo specially swept a glance towards the direction where Huangfu Fengyan came from. But she didn't discover those 2 young masters from the Huangfu family. She raised her brows, feeling a little curious. Those 2 people actually didn't follow. Huangfu Fengyan actually came here alone. When he saw Huangfu Fengyan, Huang Fuzhintian's face darkened. His expression was extremely ugly as he gave Huangfu Fengyan a backhand slap. Huangfu Fengyan was hugging onto Huang Fuzhintian's arm and was unable to avoid it at all. Like a stone that was ejected, he flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Huangfu Fengyan was stunned by the beating. He sat stiffly on the ground. Around her, there were battered and exhausted killers, staring at her with wide eyes. Huangfu Fengyan's heart fell to the bottom. These assassins, all of them failed. As soon as her grandfather saw her, he gave her a slap. In other words, Grandpa already knew. Huangfu Fengyan widened her eyes in horror. No. Absolutely not. He couldn't ruin his image in his grandfather's heart. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't be bothered about the intense pain from being slapped flying, and her eyes were red as she looked at Huangfu Jintian pitifully. Grandfather, why did you hit Yin? I don't have a granddaughter like you. Huangfu Jintian's expression remained unchanged. Chapter 3904. She swayed as she stood up. He purposely revealed his red and swollen face from the beating, in an attempt to arouse Huangfu Jintian's pity. Grandfather, don't listen to other people's slanderous words. That Yi Qing Luo, she had previously harmed Yen, in this way. Huangfu Fengyan pointed at Yi Qing Luo as she cried out in grievance. Yi Qing Luo. Why did the blame fall onto her again? Huangfu Jintian felt even more disappointed. But, in front of so many people, he tried his best to suppress his anger. Huangfu Fengyan was after all his Huangfu family's fourth Mississippi. This kind of matter, although everyone was well aware of it. But they had to close the door and settle it privately. Otherwise, the entire Huangfu family's reputation would be thrown away. Huangfu Jintian retracted his sharp gaze, and when he looked at Pei Xing, he became even more benevolent than before. He patted Pei Xing lightly. Pei Xing, I will definitely give you an explanation. Really no need. Old master, don't affect Huangfu family because of me. Pei Xing took a look at Huang Fengyan as he shook his head and rejected. The more he rejected, the more old master doted on him. The more he looked at Huang Fengyan, the more vicious his gaze became. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but clicked her tongue when she saw this scene. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her lips twitched lazily. Following that, she pulled Gu Zixi to her side and whispered into her ear, Your Oshing has improved, he actually knows how to scheme. At this point in time, no one knew Pei Xing better than Gu Zixi, so she naturally understood Pei Xing's meaning. She smiled as her eyes revealed some pride. No matter what he does, I like him. Yi Qing Luo pinched her. I know you like him, there's no need to keep talking about it. I'm just curious, how did your Oshing suddenly light up this skill? White lotuses were not only limited to women. When a man turned white, it was even scarier. For example, the current Pei Xing. He said, forget it. Did he really think that it was over? Not possible. Not possible. How could it be over, just like that? If it was according to their previous thoughts. Directly past this assassination matter to old master to handle. Indeed, they could get an explanation. But in the end, the Huangfu trio would absolutely not suffer too much damage. And in the future, it might even get worse. For example, he could be even more ruthless. But Pei Xing chose to give up on revenge on purpose. She felt sorry for the old man. Not only did she put herself in the position of a victim, but she also put herself in the position of a pitiful person who was not loved or loved. In this way, how could the old man really let it go? The old master would only feel sorry for Pei Xing. They would not easily let off the mastermind behind the assassination. Even if Huangfu and the other two didn't receive any substantial punishment in the end. However, in the future, the old master would feel guilty and dote on his kind-hearted and relatable little grandson even more. Pei Xing's move. It was a beautiful move. Gu Zixi's eyes sparkled as she looked at Pei Xing. Yi Qing Luo couldn't stand this simple-minded couple style as she pushed Gu Zixi to Pei Xing's side, interrupting Huangfu Fengyan's sob. Old man, it's getting late. Everyone should disperse. Xing and Zixi's wounds need to be treated as well. Mention the wound. The old man felt even more guilty. Chapter 3905. Pei Xing hesitated for a moment. He glanced at Huang Fu Fengyan's direction and shook his head. There's no need. I still have to tidy up this courtyard. An assassin had broken in. And a fight. The courtyard was already in shambles. Huang Fu Zhentian still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo continued, Old master, Zixi is an alchemist. With Zixi taking care of her, you don't have to worry. After saying that, she glanced meaningfully at the assassins. The old man must have other things to deal with, right? Huang Fu Zhentian's expression swiftly became extremely gloomy. His cold eyes looked at the miserable assassins on the ground, then looked at Huang Fu Fengyan. He snorted coldly, his majestic anger surging. Huang Fu Fengyan felt a chill run down her spine. There was only one thought in his mind. That was, he absolutely could not admit it. Once she admitted it, she would lose everything she had now. Huang Fu Zhentian's gaze grew fiercer and fiercer. After staring at Huang Fu Fengyan for a while, he forcefully closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the emotions on his face were much calmer. He clasped his hands at Su Qingbing with a solemn expression. Bloody leader, thank you for your help today. I, Huang Fu Zhentian, will remember your kindness. I'll definitely repay your kindness in the future. Then, he said, can you let me handle these assassins? It's not really a favor. Bloody mercenary group didn't come here to save Pei Xing. Su Qingbing's lips curled into a smile. As for these assassins, if old master Huang Fu wants them, feel free to take them. Not to save that brat. Huang Fu Zhentian caught the main point and frowned slightly. What do you mean by that? As profound practitioners of the heaven realm, which was above the earth realm, basically, he did not know much about the people or forces in the lower realms. But, there were three great forces in the land, and even old master Huang Fu, who was in the heaven, had heard of them. One was the gathering place of lunatics, at the underworld palace. One of them was the Linglong Palace, which nurtured the saintesses of the three main cities. The other was the bloody mercenary group in this world. Even if bloody mercenary group was the second-ranked mercenary group, his reputation rose like a crane. This was because the number one mercenary group had already developed to the heaven realm. And this bloody mercenary group was also known as the second mercenary group to develop their forces into heaven realm. Huang Fu Zhentian's attitude towards Su Qingbing was so gentle. Aside from the fact that Bloody had saved Pei Xing, he was also impressed by the bloody mercenary's abilities. Su Qingbing raised her slender eyebrows as a playful smile appeared on her beautiful face. She walked towards Pei Xing. No, to be more precise, it was Gu Zixi who was walking towards Pei Xing. He then raised his hand and placed it lazily on Gu Zixi shoulder. As he raised his head, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. There was an indescribable meaning in his smile. I brought my Bloody Red's elite troops here to save my troublesome vice regiment commander. Saving Pei Xing was just a convenience. So. Old Master Huang Fu, you really don't have to take it to heart. Vice leader. Gu Zixi. This news caused Huang Fu Zhentian to be stunned. The one who had the most exaggerated reaction was Huang Fu Fengyan. She almost bounced up from the ground and glared at Gu Zixi. Her voice was trembling. Her. Vice regiment commander. Are you kidding me? Su Qingbing tilted her head and glanced sideways at Huang Fu Fengyan. Chapter 3906. No. I don't believe. Huang Fu Fengyan's eyes widened in disbelief as her body staggered. She had naturally heard of the blood mercenary group's name. She also knew that it was a mercenary group which many large forces admired. Gu Zishi, that slut, was just a lowly slut who could only cling on to Pei Xing's illegitimate son. How could she change so quickly? And become the vice group leader of the blood mercenary group? Vice group leader. It wasn't as simple as the blood mercenary group. That was second only to the group leader. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't believe that the lady whom she had belittled would have such a powerful background. Huangfu Fengyan's sharp voice made Pei Xing regain his senses. He also widened his eyes in shock and astonishment. He only knew that Gu Zishi and the blood mercenary group had a good relationship. It was rumored that Gu Zishi had saved the blood mercenary group's group leader on the West Cliff Mountain, hence the blood mercenary group would occasionally help Gu Zishi or gather treasures. But he had never thought that Gu Zishi and the blood mercenary group had such a deep relationship. In his mind, he suddenly recalled what Yiqing Luo said previously. Gu Zishi gave up everything in the earth realm and followed him to the heaven realm. This everything. He didn't think too deeply at that time. Until now. He finally understood. This everything was really Gu Zishi's everything. She could even give up the identity of the blood mercenary group's vice group leader. Gu Zishi's feelings for him. How deep was it? Pei Xing only felt his heart suddenly constricting. As if something was squeezing it tightly. His eyes felt a little warm and sore. He looked at Gu Zishi without blinking. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and hugged Gu Zishi's petite body tightly in his arms. His head rested on Gu Zishi's shoulder. He said firmly, "Zishi. When we reach the heaven realm, we'll get married." Get married. These two words made Gu Zishi grab Pei Xing's clothes tightly in surprise. Her eyes instantly turned red as she nodded her head vigorously. The two of them hugged each other tightly. On the other side, Huangfu Jintian took a deep look at the two of them hugging each other and looked at Su Qingbing. Although he didn't show it on his face. But in his heart, he was shocked when he heard this news. In his heart, he was even more satisfied with his grandson and the woman that he had taken a liking to. In his heart, a decision was slowly forming. His expression was solemn as he looked at Su Qingbing and said, "Regardless of the reason why Leader Scarlet had intervened, it is a fact that Leader Scarlet has saved that boy. I will definitely remember this kindness. As for other matters, don't worry, Leader Scarlet. Since I've personally brought that boy and Lady Gu to the heaven realm, I will definitely protect them." Any intelligent person would be able to tell. Su Qingbing had purposely revealed the reason why Gu Zishi was the vice leader of Bloody. To put it bluntly, he just wanted to show Gu Zishi how powerful she was. At the same time, it would change Gu Zishi's position in the Huangfu family's heart. It was also a warning to old Master Huangfu. Gu Zishi was not someone without a backer. If Gu Zishi was injured in the heaven realm, Bloody Mercenary Group would be the first to stand behind Gu Zishi and take revenge for her with all their might. The group of people said a few more words. Old Master Huangfu dragged Huangfu Fengyan away. The Bloody Mercenaries followed behind Elder Huangfu with the assassins in tow. After a while, the courtyard quietened down again. Yiqing Luo took a look at the two who were still hugging each other tightly inside. What a pair of silly lovers. Muddle-headedly registered for the QQ reading character ranking. The babies helped to make a heart sign and gave a like. They didn't wish to rush into the top 40, they only wished to be in the top 100 and not let the crippled 7 emperors appear too desolate. Chapter 3907. She simply shifted her gaze away and looked at Su Qingbing, who had yet to leave. Su Qingbing still maintained a lazy posture. That dignified look on her elegant face had been retracted by quite a bit. She just raised her head and looked at that figure on the wall. Between her beautiful eyes, there was some brilliance flowing. But when Yiqing Luo took a careful look, it was a stretch of deep, without a single bit of emotion. She followed Su Qingbing's gaze. On the wall, the red-robed man who was standing against the wind met her eyes expressionlessly. The person Su Qingbing was looking at was Zhu Wuaxian. She raised her brows, feeling that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. Since he's safe, I'll make a move first. I'll leave these two fools in your care. Su Qingbing seemed to have sensed Yiqing Luo's gaze and immediately retracted her gaze, as she pretended not to mind and waved her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a crescent shape as her figure moved and appeared next to Su Qingbing. She raised her hand and hooked onto Su Qingbing's shoulder. The young lady gave a teasing smile as she teased, "Why? Are you in a hurry to leave, afraid that I'll see through some secret that I shouldn't see?" Su Qingbing's beautiful eyes flashed as she subconsciously looked at Zhu Wuaxian. After this action was done, Su Qingbing then realized that she had been hooked. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. Her curved brows and narrow long eyes outlined an arc, like a blooming datura flower, so alluring that it made one suffocated. Tisk, Su Qingbing's look made Yiqing Luo even more interested. She was really curious. What had happened between Su Qingbing and Zhu Wuaxian? She could tell. Su Qingbing's impression of Zhu Wuaxian was very deep. I have to return to Blood Color headquarters first. Su Qingbing's hair stood on end from Yiqing Luo's meaningful smile. She hurriedly found an excuse. She turned around and hurriedly leapt up the wall. On top of the wall, Su Qingbing intentionally halted her footsteps. Her vision clashed with Zhu Wuaxian. In just a few breaths' time, she raised her breath again and her figure flashed as she blended into the night. The courtyard which had turned into ruins fell into a strange silence. That pair of foolish lovers were still hugging each other, unwilling to part. A fool is a fool. Hugging each other and feeling each other's warmth, this was their happiness. But, Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the both of them as her lips suddenly curled into a crafty arc. Then, he lifted his leg and kicked Pei Xing's butt. Pei Xing's entire body was kicked forward by the force. Gu Zixi almost lost her footing. Following that, several medicine bottles were stuffed into their arms. Get out of the house and make love. Yiqing Luo turned their bodies around and pushed them towards the room which wasn't affected by the battle earlier. Pei Xing was forcefully pushed to the door as he struggled to turn his head around to take a look at Yiqing Luo. But because of Yiqing Luo's strength, he was unable to resist at all. "Ah Luo, don't tell me you don't like our relationship because His Majesty is not here and you can't stand it?" Yiqing Luo's expression instantly sunk. The hand that grabbed Pei Xing's shoulder suddenly tightened. "Ah!" Pei Xing screamed miserably as his shoulder struggled to pull away from Yiqing Luo's palm. It was so painful that he almost cried. Yiqing Luo gave a fake smile. "If you still want to hug a beauty to sleep tonight, you'd better shut your mouth and roll into the room." Pei Xing, this smile is so scary. He swiftly hugged Gu Zixi tightly as he escaped into the room. Chapter 3908. In the courtyard, there was only Yiqing Luo left. She then stretched her body lazily. As she yawned, she looked towards the red figure standing on the wall. "The show has ended, aren't you leaving?" Zhu Wuaxian's vision, from the start, was fixed on her. When he saw the young lady's languid look, her long and narrow eyes were filled with a lazy misty look towards him. His eyes glowed with a bright light. Even his pitch-black pupils involuntarily contracted. His hands which were hanging by his side clenched into fists. Especially when that young lady yawned, with a soft and coquettish voice rang. His body, almost instantly turned stiff and taut. For a long time, the man didn't reply. Yiqing Luo lowered her hands as she raised her brows at him, meeting with Zhu Wuaxian's scorching gaze. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly as she tilted her head, her eyes revealing a smile which didn't look like a smile. Have you seen enough? This sentence made Zhu Wu Axian have a response. His thin lips moved slightly as his voice was very cold. Not enough. If you're still conscious, then please go ahead. Take care, I won't send you off. Yiqing Luo intentionally ignored his provocative words as she impatiently waved her hand. Zhu Wu Axian instead flew down from the wall. He got close to Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man and red-robed young lady's figures intertwined. Yiqing Luo didn't evade. Instead she faced the man's approaching face, raising her head as her lips curled into a bright smile. This smile, like a blooming poppy flower, giving off a suffocating charm, magnified under his eyes. Zhu Wu Axian's heart skipped a beat. Immediately after, his body abruptly pulled away from Yiqing Luo. His eyes were flickering with erratic emotions. Yiqing Luo revealed an understanding smile. She was very clear. The more she expressed that she didn't want to interact with him, Zhu Wu Axian would be insatiable, wanting to leave a place in her heart. On the contrary, she cooperated with Zhu Wu Axian's words. Zhu Wu Axian would be even more shy than her. Looking at Yiqing Luo's teasing smile, Zhu Wu Axian's pupils contracted. He suddenly stretched out his hand and clasped Yiqing Luo's wrist as his eyes stared straight at her. Do you think that I don't dare to do anything to you? Yes. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly, if you dare. When I just arrived at the Earth realm, you painstakingly imprisoned me for half a month, and erased all my memories, you would have done it. The hand that was clasping her wrist suddenly tightened. Even Zhu Wuxin stiffened for a moment. Even now, you still blame me. Zhu Wuxin stared at her. It was not a question, but a statement. It would be a lie to say that I don't blame him. Yiqing Luo didn't try to hide it, no matter which woman it is. If she was kidnapped by another man and imprisoned by his side for as long as half a month, would she not blame that man? Zhu Wuxin's eyes darkened, and he clenched his fists. His slender fingers pressed onto Yiqing Luo's wrist, causing some pain. Zhu Wu Axian didn't bother about Yiqing Luo's slightly creased brows because of the pain, but instead pressed down even tighter. Even the words that came out of his mouth were mixed with the meaning of gnashing his teeth. I shouldn't have been soft on you in the first place. Not soft. His meaning was that he should have taken the opportunity to eat her up in the first place. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, but there wasn't any hint of a smile in her eyes. If you really did that, then between us, there would no longer be any feelings. The next time we meet, we will be enemies. Enemies too. At least, you will not belong to that man. Zhu Wuxin's eyes seemed to be surging with waves. Chapter 3909. Yiqing Luo frowned. Looking at the madness in Zhu Wuxin's eyes, her heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously wanted to break free from Zhu Wuxin's grip. However, Zhu Wuxin tightened his grip. He reached out with his long arms. He then pressed Yiqing Luo heavily into his arms. The plum fragrance which assaulted her nostrils made Yiqing Luo's slender brows crease tightly in discomfort. She struggled. Zhu Wuxin. Woman, you are really heartless. Zhu Wuxin was almost gnashing his teeth next to her ear. This time, I really do not want to go easy on you. As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted strength in his arm. The man's warm breath rushed over from a close distance. There was also a hint of fragrance mixed with it that made her feel alarmed. Almost at the instant the man lowered his head. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed coldly. His dark force burst forth. He flipped his palm, intending to attack Zhu Wuxin and avoid his approach. It was at this moment. A heavy groan sounded beside his ear. The hand on his waist suddenly loosened. What replaced it was another strong and powerful force. The familiar fragrance of sandalwood wafted into his nose. Yiqing Luo turned her head happily. Sure enough, she saw her man appear behind her. Dmo Xian had one arm around her waist. His expression was noble and elegant as his gaze was filled with a chilly glint as he stared intently at Zhu Wuaxian. I'm late. The man's deep and mellow voice instantly soothed Yiqing Luo's restless heart. His large and thick palms pulled the young girl's delicate body into his embrace. It was different, thick, and sturdy. A different kind of warmth. It was a different taste. It was a completely different feeling from Zhu Wuxin. Dmo Xian. Was the feeling she wanted to have the most. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Suddenly, she raised her lips and tightly wrapped her arms around the man's firm waist. She buried her face in his chest. Struck by the palm, Zhu Wuxin had to retreat several steps before he could stabilize himself. The flame-like red swayed. After Yiqing Luo absorbed the warmth, she popped her head out to take a look at Zhu Wuaxian. He felt that the current Zhu Wuxin had a gloomy feeling, as if the flames all over his body were about to be extinguished. As if I had lost all my life light. He seemed to have sensed her gaze. Zhu Wuxin clutched his chest and looked at her with a pale face. His eyes met hers. A smile appeared on his grave and stern face. His lips curled up slightly. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but creased her slender brows once again. He didn't have time to think about it. A large palm suddenly covered her eyes. In front of him, there was only warmth, and he couldn't see anything. Don't look at him. The man's domineering voice rang in her ears, and there was a hint of jealousy in his tone. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhu Wuaxian. Chapter 39:10. The young lady's alluring face was filled with calmness. The corners of his lips curled into a mocking sneer. Even the gaze which she shot towards Zhu Wuaxian was filled with viciousness. This gaze made Zhu Wuaxian's heart felt as though it was pierced by something as it trembled fiercely. As though something was gradually disappearing between him and Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man's eyes were filled with madness. At this moment, there was finally a slight fluctuation. The wind brought along the young lady's ridiculing laughter. Zhu Wuaxian, do you think that after knowing that you imprisoned me for nearly half a month, I will still be defenseless against you? Zhu Wuaxian, do you think that after doing this, I will belong to you again? Zhu Wuaxian. The dirty person is you. The young lady spoke each word extremely clearly. Her voice was very sweet. But in Zhu Wuaxian's ears, it was like a sharp blade, fiercely slicing his eardrums. That sharp blade went down from his ears to his heart. And then slowly sliced his heart, bit by bit. Unbearable pain. Zhu Wuaxian shut his eyes tightly. From the moment you made a move against me earlier, I was completely certain. Earlier you stopped me several times, not allowing me to rush over to save Pei Xing, obviously. On purpose. At that moment, Yiqing Luo was already suspicious towards Zhu Wuaxian's appearance. But because it was Zhu Wuaxian, she didn't investigate further. Because she knew that Zhu Wuaxian's obsession towards her would absolutely not harm her. So she chose to believe in Zhu Wuaxian. Until just now. When she smelled that fragrance from the man. Yiqing Luo then realized that everything was because she was too naive. From the start of Zhu Wuaxian's appearance till now. All had a motive. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wuaxian heard Yiqing Luo's ridiculing words. And when she looked at him, that disappointment and ridicule. His heart felt as though it was being sliced into pieces. He subconsciously wanted to explain, Yiqing Luo is not. Are you trying to say that it's not what I think? Yiqing Luo interrupted his words, as her smile became even more contemptuous. Even between his brows, there was a mocking smile that was not a smile. Zhu Wu Axian. Suddenly, she called his name in a serious tone. The young lady withdrew herself from Dmo Xian's embrace as she lifted her light footsteps and walked towards him. The girl's expression was cold, and her picturesque eyebrows were filled with killing intent. Zhu Wu Axian felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. He was so nervous that he could only stare at the girl's approaching face and clench his fists tightly, waiting for her to continue. You want to explain, right? All right, I'll give you a chance. She stood 3 steps away from Zhu Wu Axian. Then, she raised her eyes and stared straight into his eyes. Zhu Wu Axian's heart skipped a beat again. Do you dare look me in the eye and tell me that your appearance today is not a coincidence, but an accident? Zhu Wu Axian's eyes darkened. Even his cold face was covered with a layer of frost. This reaction. Even if he didn't answer. Yiqing Luo had already gotten her answer. She sneered and looked at Zhu Wu Axian. She couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Wu Axian, if you really want to lie to me, you should lie to the end. I want to lie to you. Zhu Wu Axian's expression was gloomy and cold as his eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo, as a whirlpool appeared in between his brows, but I know that the minute I really lie to you, you will really become a stranger to me. It's not fake. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her smile was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Chapter 39:11. It wasn't fake. Which meant, no matter what his answer was, like strangers, these 4 words couldn't be fake. Zhu Wu Axian's heartstrings quivered. He thought. After Yiqing Luo found out that he had imprisoned her for half a month, she wasn't too angry and still treated him the same as before. He thought. Yiqing Luo wouldn't blame him. But he had never expected Yiqing Luo to be so resolute. So resolute that when he intended to do it for the second time, she would not hesitate to cut off all relations with him. His heart, as compared to the first time he met her, was even more painful from her cold attitude and when she totally didn't recognize him. It was so painful that he was about to die. He thought. He was already numb and no matter how painful it was, he could maintain his calmness, to stand calmly in front of Yiqing Luo and continue his stubbornness. But the feeling now proved that his thought was really just a thought. His heart would hurt. When he met with the young lady's icy cold gaze, his heart would surge with waves. Not to mention standing in front of her. Now, he only had the urge to escape from her accusing gaze. Zhu Wu Axian, you're still working with the secluded palace, right? You want to help the secluded palace to deal with the people around me, right? Even when Yiqing Luo saw his cold face, that complicated and painful expression, she didn't let him off. She was still overbearing. The imposing manner became more and more pressing. The expression on Zhu Wu Axian's face became even more conflicted. He moved his thin lips and his voice sounded a little hoarse. No. It's not like that, He wanted to explain but when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he licked his dry lips and stopped the words from leaving his mouth. Immediately after, his thin lips pursed, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo waited for a moment and on seeing him maintaining his silence, her lips curled into a sneer of ridicule. Explain, I'm not being unreasonable. If you don't want to listen to your explanation, I'll give you a chance to explain. Zhu Wu Axian continued to stare at her without blinking, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo's gaze towards him became even colder. Since you're not going to explain, then I'll speak according to my understanding. Her brows rose as her tone was filled with ridicule. Do you think that after breaking my wings, I can only choose to rely on you? Ha, Zhu Wu Axian, do you think I'm such a person? No. Light flickered in Zhu Wuxian's eyes, and he wanted to answer. However, he still held back and did not say it out loud. If Yiqing Luo was that kind of person, he would absolutely not take another look at her. But it was precisely because he knew this. He wanted to see even more, after Yiqing Luo lost everything. What would they become? At that time, would his obsession still be as deep as it was now? Zhu Wuxin, just give up. Even if you want to break my wings, even if you want to separate me and Xian. This lifetime, the next lifetime, the next lifetime, no matter how long it takes. I, Yiqing Luo, will never choose you. Yiqing Luo's voice was cold and ruthless. The sonorous voice was like a huge hammer that landed heavily on Zhu Wuxin's heart. Zhu Wuxian's body shook violently. He flicked his sleeves. A cool breeze swept past. Several sharp sounds of wind could be heard in the air. The red figure had already disappeared before his eyes. In her resolute words, Zhu Wuxin fled in panic. Yiqing Luo was expressionless, as though she had no emotions towards his escape. Only after she was sure that Zhu Wuxian's presence had completely disappeared. Chapter 39:12. The young lady's face was pale and there was no longer that overbearing aura from earlier on. Her petite body was caught by someone. Tightly, she was brought into a warm and spacious embrace. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's voice was filled with anxiety and worry. Yiqing Luo wanted to open her eyes and smile at him to reassure him. But the minute she opened her eyes, it was a patch of blood color before her eyes which immediately turned into a patch of pitch black. She was unable to open her eyes. The dizziness in her head made her lose the ability to think. Finally, under Dmo Xian's gentle and affectionate call of Lil Luo, she completely lost all consciousness. Lil Luo, Sensing the change in Yiqing Luo's breathing, Dmo Xian's voice suddenly rose as his shimmering eyes stared intently at the person in his arms. After checking the young lady's pulse, Dmo Xian's expression turned darker. His fingers clenched tightly as he gritted his teeth and spat out 3 words, Zhu Wuxian. Damn that Zhu Wuxian. No matter if Lil Luo, would forgive Zhu Wuxian. He would absolutely not forgive her. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he raised his voice and called out in a low voice, Xian, Biyuan. 2 figures, one tall and one short, appeared in the night sky. Guard this place, don't let other blind things come near. Dmo Xian instructed and carried Yiqing Luo as he flew away. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the direction where Dmo Xian left, watching his figure disappear completely. She then regained her senses as she slowly stood up. The man on the side was tall and imposing, with a handsome face, but his brows were rigid and solemn. The man's vision had been on Tang Beiyuan. Seeing that she stood up and was still in a daze, he comforted her, "Madam will be fine." Hearing the man's voice, Tang Beiyuan's eyelashes fluttered. When she raised her head, her lips curled into a smile, "Amen, I know. With the overlord around, Madam will definitely be fine." She had seen with her own eyes how much her master cared about Yiqing Luo. Her daze wasn't because she was worried about Yiqing Luo, but very envious. Envious of the relationship between the overlord and Madam. No matter what time it was, it would always make one laugh unknowingly. As for her, even though her fiancé was by her side, he could even touch it with his hand. However, she still felt as if they were thousands of miles apart and out of reach. Tang Beiyuan lowered her eyes and the smile on her face disappeared. "Yuan, The man sensed that Tang Beiyuan was upset. He raised his hand and placed it on her shoulder in confusion. "What's wrong?" Tang Beiyuan raised her head and stared blankly at Langley Xian, who was a head taller than her. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. I'm fine. And Langley Xian caressed her face and didn't ask any more questions. The man wiped his face with his slightly cold hand. Tang Beiyuan instinctively reached out and grabbed his hand. Langley Xian was startled and looked at her doubtfully. Tang Beiyuan gritted her teeth, mustered up her courage, and placed the man's hand on her waist. Then she turned around and hooked her arms around his neck. It's been a long time since we've been this close. To be more precise, it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Every time they met, it was just a hurried glance. After that, they would leave in a hurry. Not to mention a hug to feel each other's warmth. There wasn't even a chance to greet each other. Chapter 39:13. Langley Xian had just finished his words when he used his actions to express his attitude. He pulled Tang Beiyuan's hand away and widened the distance between the both of them. Immediately after, he leapt up the wall in the dark and his entire figure was hidden in the darkness. Tang Beiyuan stood in a daze on the spot. The hands which were pulled away by the man were still hanging stiffly in the air. After some time, he slowly retracted his hands. There seemed to be a man's touch on her wrists. There seemed to be a man's scent in her nose. Tang Beiyuan's lips suddenly twitched as she gave a soft laugh. She turned her head and walked towards the other side of the wall. Hiding in the dark with the man on the left and right. And completely hiding the sparkling eyes which flashed past her eyes. Qiao residence. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo back to the room. His fiery appearance was accompanied by a powerful pressure. It made those who had just returned to the Qiao residence ran out of the room in shock. It was so late at night, this was very scary all right. They thought that the secluded palace had made a comeback. But after seeing the unconscious Yiqing Luo, everyone couldn't stand still as they flocked over. Kitty Lee was carried out from Zomo's arms and she was still rubbing her eyes sleepily, but when she saw Yiqing Luo being placed on the bed, her eyes suddenly opened wide. She scurried out of Zomo's arms and pounced towards the bed. Sister. What happened to sister? What happened to her? Kitty Lee held Yiqing Luo's hand but realized that her hand was ice cold. Old Lai didn't feel well, earlier at the Treasures Exchange Hall, wasn't she still fine? How long has it been? In his impression, Yiqing Luo and the Overlord were on the same level of abnormality. No one could hurt her. So on the way back to the Qiao residence, they didn't specially wait for Yiqing Luo. No one had expected. It was such a coincidence. Yiqing Luo was coincidentally injured. Gue Wu stood in the crowd as he frowned slightly. Apparently, he was puzzled over why Yiqing Luo was injured and was carried back by Dmo Xian. She's fine. Among the many concerned voices, Dmo Xian's slightly hoarse voice rang. He also successfully suppressed the voices of those who were talking at once. Dmo Xian sat on the bedside. Kitty Lee looked at Dmo Xian and then at Yiqing Luo. Under Zomo's tugging, he reluctantly let go of Yiqing Luo's hand and gave up his position to Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian held Yiqing Luo's hand, using his broad palm to warm Yiqing Luo's hand as he continued to speak calmly. I'm here, everyone, don't worry. Everyone turned pale and wanted to ask more questions. But looking at Dmo Xian's expression, however, none of them dared to ask. In the end, Gue Wu took the lead and walked out of the room. Only then did the others leave the room one after another, looking back every few steps. After closing the door, Kitty Lee pursed her lips. She grabbed Zomo's hand with displeasure and worry, pinching it from time to time. What's wrong with my sister? Dizun and brother-in-law didn't say anything. How can I be at ease? The overlord is more worried about her than any of us. Zhou Mo caressed Kitty Lee's head. Since the overlord says it's fine, then Xiao Qing Luo will be fine. Qing Luo Shi. Suddenly, a soft but emotionless voice was heard from the crowd. Everyone's gazes turned towards the direction of the voice. Chapter 39:14. Drugged unconscious. What kind of joke was that? Yi Qing Luo, that kind of pervert. She was a top-tier alchemist. How could she be drugged unconscious? It's the truth. Mo Yuing blinked her empty eyes and repeated seriously, you can ask her when she wakes up. Looking at the little lowly's serious look. Everyone was still in disbelief. After all, drugging had always been Yi Qing Luo's specialty. I believe you. Suddenly, a deep voice was heard. Qiao Yinyan had appeared at the corner of the long corridor and was slowly walking towards their direction. The moment Qiao Yinyan appeared, everyone stopped their discussion. The man walked slowly to Mo Yuing. His gaze was deep like the sea and his silver hair hung down his cheeks, adding a mysterious and noble feeling to the man. Mo Yuing raised her head and blinked as she looked at the approaching figure. The aura from the man made her heart, or rather, her soul, had a restless feeling. It was very uncomfortable and she didn't like this feeling. She wanted to avoid it. But Qiao Yinyan seemed to see through her thoughts as he stretched out his hand and blocked in front of her. The man's gaze was burning, as if he could see through Mo Yuying's soul. You have always been sensitive to the people you care about and can easily see the condition of others. This point. You still haven't changed. Mo Yuying's brows were tightly knitted together as she looked at him with her empty eyes. However, his pupils were not focused at all, and there was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. When these eyes looked over, for a moment, it made one feel that this pair of eyes were already blind. Anyone who was stared at by such empty eyes for a long time would have a creepy feeling. However, Qiao Yinyan met her gaze and gently curved his thin lips. He smiled and said, even your expression of disgust hasn't changed. Mo Yuying's stiff expression loosened for a moment. When the others heard this sweet, cloying words, all of them rubbed their arms. How did Qiao Yinyan see the bored expression on Mo Yuying's face? That was obviously expressionless, okay? That was what everyone thought in their hearts. But as the person involved, Mo Yuing was shocked. She had always been unable to express her emotions. Her face was stiff. His eyes were lifeless. Even his voice was completely emotionless. In addition, she couldn't even express ordinary emotions. Even a sensitive lady like Yi Qing Luo would not be able to detect her emotions. This man in front of him, yet he could see through her heart so easily. Could it be that she really knew him before? After Lin Mingya invited him out of the room, the chatter outside the door continued. Dmo Xian looked at the unconscious young girl. His fingertips covered the young girl's slightly furrowed brows and gently smoothed her brows. Then, with a flick of his sleeve, an invisible wave spread out in the room, forming an oval transparent barrier that enveloped the entire room. It also successfully blocked out the noisy discussion outside the door. He held the girl's cold hand tightly, one hand on his cheek and the other on his mouth to warm it. His peerless face was filled with a peaceful expression of pampering. There was not the slightest hint of anxiety or unease. He wasn't worried that this medicine would cause any harm or influence to Yi Qing Luo. Because this was the medicine which Xu Wu Axian had given to Yi Qing Luo. Even if Xu Wu Axian was working together with the secluded palace, he would absolutely not hurt Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, his body, which was so heavy that he couldn't move at all, fell down the cliff at an extremely fast speed. It was extremely fast. Yiqing Luo could feel the sharp wind, like a knife, cutting her skin. The wind whistled past her ears, irritating her eardrums. She wanted to resist. However, his stiff body was unable to move. He took a deep breath to alleviate the pressure of falling. There was a sharp pain in her heart, causing her to be unable to concentrate. His body continued to fall, and continued to fall. It was like a bottomless abyss. No matter what, he couldn't touch the end point. Yiqing Luo tried her best to concentrate, as her vision suddenly fixed on a certain spot. Not too far away from her. An illusory figure was faintly discernible. Even though her falling speed was extremely fast. But that figure was still firmly fixed in her pupils. QQ Readings Character Ranking. May I trouble my babies to help me make a heart sign and label them. Not hoping to charge into the top 40, but to be able to maintain within the top 100. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.